We all know about the speed of sound, but have you ever thought about the sounds of speeding? If you drive over the speed limit, there are lots of different sounds you might hear. Drive too fast and you can hear the sound of your vehicle crashing, the sound of ambulances and first responders desperately trying to free you from the wreckage. You can hear the beeps of a heart monitor. You can hear doctors and nurses in an emergency room as you're being treated for your injuries. You can hear the sound of your worried family members in the hospital waiting room, hoping to hear that you're okay. You could even hear the sound of people crying at a funeral. Because if you drive over the speed limit, whether by a lot or by a little, you could do damage that's beyond repair. You could seriously injure yourself. Or worse, you could hurt and even kill someone else. When you speed, you put everyone on the road in danger. One way or another, speeding catches up with you. Paid for by NHTSA.
This is the story of the one. As a maintenance engineer, he hears things differently. To the untrained ear, everything on his shop floor might sound fine, but he can hear gears grinding or a belt slipping. So he steps in to fix the problem at hand before it gets out of hand. And he knows Grainger's got the right product he needs to get the job done, which is music to his ears. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phil and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we're going to break down the Orioles selections in rounds 2 through 10 of the 2024 Major League Draft. This portion of the draft saw the Orioles stick to their college hitter-heavy approach, but mix in some pitchers and an intriguing high school pick, all of which we're going to break down on tonight's episode. But first, Orioles on the Verge is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all your sports betting needs this season. From baseball, golf, soccer, right to all the top fights in UFC, MMA, and boxing. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, the game starts here. Now, as we break down rounds 2 through 10, most of what we're going to be talking about occurred on Monday afternoon, but we are going to start off by backtracking to Sunday night, and the Orioles' final selection of the first day of the MLB draft saw them take Ethan Anderson, a switch-hitting catcher out of the University of Virginia. Anderson, who was ranked the 78th overall prospect by MLB Pipeline, has a good bat for a catcher. There are questions about whether or not he's going to be able to stick behind the plate. He's played a lot of first base at Virginia, part of that owing to the fact that through last season he was backing up Kyle Teal, a very good catcher who went in the first round of last year's draft. But there are some questions about whether or not long-term Anderson is going to end up at first base. So the Orioles did go heavy on catchers over the first 10 rounds of the draft, and that started with Anderson. So just to get our thoughts here, Nick, I'll start with you. This seems like an interesting pick when you look at Anderson's offensive profile, but given the questions about his ability to stick behind the plate, how do you feel about this selection?
I like it. I like the upside play here with Anderson. I think he was obviously Vance Honeycutt. I love that pick. Griffo Farrell, safe, high floor pick. Feel a little bit better about that pick today than I did last night, but still not as exciting to me. Ethan Anderson, though, I thought definitely ended the night on a higher note. He had 8 home runs this year compared to 15 the year before, but I mean, just like Griffo Farrell, his teammate that the Orioles drafted right before 10 picks earlier, like he's got good chase rates. He makes a ton of contact in the zone. The exit velos aren't like blistering. He's got a 109 max EV, that's what Vance Honeycutt's, I think, 90th percentile EV was. But he is also one of the younger, I don't know, he was like 20. He doesn't turn 21 until September. He's one of the youngest college guys in the draft. So we see the Orioles always go this route. Max Wagner, John Rhodes, this year it's Ethan Anderson. Switch hitter. I like it. I think just based on some of the public reports like Joe Doyle and over at Prospects Live, I feel like the Orioles saw him work behind the plate or had him for a workout and, brought their guys, their catchers in the system or catching coaches in the system, that is, to watch him And I think maybe that was like a tipping point where I'm thinking that they liked what he looked like as a catcher, and that's what helped propel him up, along with his age and good batted ball data. But I like the pick. Good upside here.
Yeah, I love this pick. It was my favorite pick of day one, other than Honeycutt. Well, okay, three choices there, but I really enjoyed the pick. A switch hitting hitter. I think, position to be determined. Maybe he could play left field, first base. Maybe he could be like the emergency catcher down the line for the Orioles if they keep him in the mix there. But I feel like if they're taking him this high, they probably at least feel somewhat comfortable with him sticking at catcher at least part-time. But for me, the bat seems like it's going to play. A switch hitter with 55 hit tool, 55 power. Seemed like not much swing and miss, especially for a guy with a 55 future power tool. I think his strikeouts were very, very low. It was like 10%, or I feel like, yeah, was that right, Nick? 10%, something around there?
Yeah, 10%, 95th percentile in the country. Nothing.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy for a switch hitting, more of a power hitter. For Griffo Farrell, it makes sense, but for Ethan Anderson, or God, is that his name? Yeah, Ethan Anderson. That is a lot more exciting for a guy that can put some oomph into the ball. And yeah, I feel like just a pure hitter. And, we don't have many first base prospects in this organization, but maybe Anderson could be one.
Yeah, I like this pick because I do think that there's enough projection with the bat that if he doesn't stick behind the plate, you're looking at either a quality bench option who could give you some value at first base, DH, and part-time catcher, or maybe he does improve the hit tool and improve the power tool enough that he sticks at first base. One thing that I have seen noted about Anderson is that he hits for more power from the left side, which is not that surprising. That's kind of typical of switch hitters. But when I look at Adley Rutschman's trajectory over the last few years, Rutschman in his first major league season was pretty awful from the right side of the plate. But we've seen him improve a lot in that area in the last 2 years. So that goes to show you that some players can get better with more reps on a particular side of the plate. So just because that's the case with Anderson now doesn't mean that's necessarily going to hold over the next few years.
Yeah. And I think some of the numbers too, the production was a little bit down this year. And I was looking, I think it was Jared Perkins over at Prospects Live who saw him twice this year at the beginning of the year. And I read both of his Live Look articles last night. And I think he said early in the year, the big issue was timing. And so that he got off to a slow start this past year. It looked like, according to Jared, was some timing issues at the plate, which clearly he ended up hitting 336 with a 141 WRC plus. So he clearly figured that timing out. So I like it.
The Orioles would then start day two by selecting Austin Overn, an outfielder out of USC. Overn has one of the more interesting backgrounds of any player in this draft because he was a multi-sport athlete in high school and then went to USC to play football and baseball and actually did not give up football until last year. So 2023 was really the first time he was focusing full-time on baseball. Most scouts right now have him as 80 grade speed, good defense up the middle, with some projection in the hit tool. Now, the good news is that Overn is coming off a strong performance in the Cape Cod League. And while Matt Blood, the Orioles director, I don't have his exact title right in front of me, Vice President of Player Development and Domestic Scouting, in a quote to Andy Koska at the Baltimore Banner, noted that the Orioles had been in on Overn until the Cape Cod League. He added that, quote, the Cape Cod League helped, but that was not a player that we were not on before the Cape, and we were very much in on him at the very beginning. So good Cape performance helping Overn, but the Orioles clearly have had him on their radar for a while, and they followed up in the fourth round by taking right-hander Chase Allsup out of Auburn. Now, Allsup listed at 6'2", 235. If you just want to go based on pure profile and scouting report, you could make a comparison to 2022 Trace Bright. After all, both pitchers went to Auburn, hard throwers whose stuff didn't exactly match the results that they had in draft year. Allsup coming off a season in which he's actually posted a 5.11 ERA over his last 3 seasons at Auburn, but he's got a fastball that runs 94 to 96 and can top out at 100. Much like Bright when he came into the system, though, there are questions about how his secondaries are going to develop. And it seems like the curveball and the changeup are the pitches that have the furthest to go for him in his development. So, Bob, when you look at these two players, what do you say?
A lot of upside, honestly. I like these picks as well. O'Vern, not to be confused with Ryan O'Hearn. Pure athlete, just the speed, the defense, again, is very 2023 draft, seemingly with the speed, the defense. And I think I saw on the Future Star series, Joe Doyle, that he's got some poolside pop. So, definitely some upside here. Just a pure athlete that in the mold of Reed Trimble and all those guys that the Orioles love. I think he's a little bit on the younger side as well. I could be confusing him with somebody else, but a lot to like there. Him and Tavian Josenberger and Enrique Bradfield and Vance Honeycutt. I mean, balls aren't dropping in the outfield anytime soon in the Orioles minor leagues. And Chase Allsup, he can reach back and hit triple digits. That's pretty exciting. We talked about last year with the draft where we know the Orioles love a hoppy fastball and spin that they can mess around with, and he's got that. But also, just like last year with guys like Kiefer Lord and Jackson Ballmeister, he's got a little more of that high-velocity electric arm to work with. And, he's a big, tall guy. If they can harness his stuff, I'm liking what I see.
O'Vern, they take a guy like this every draft. Bob mentioned them, the Reed Trimbles and Tavian Josenbergers, except O'Vern doesn't have like the experience on the infield, I don't think. But it's these guys who they're fast. You got the 80 grade speed. The broadcast said he's probably the best defensive outfielder in this draft class and the fastest player in this draft class. Sounds familiar. They took that guy last year as well. He admitted, I read an interview, this year wasn't that good when he was at USC, but he's also a draft eligible sophomore. So I feel like this is where you're going to have to put a little bit of money up to get O'Vern. And if the Orioles were as high on him as it seems they were from Matt Blood's comments, then they're going to be willing to spend up. They got a couple senior signs here, so there should be plenty of money. I like the Joe Doyle's right up there. It was fun. It was short and sweet, but it just says extremely quick hands, total freak athlete, double plus speed, pull side juice, super tooled up kid. So I think that could be fun. And then there was a fun graphic that somebody had dug up and started retweeting. I saw it making rounds after the pick, but the defensive runs saved leaderboard from the 2023 college season. Number 1 on that list was Enrique Bradfield. Number 2 was O'Vern, and number 3 was Vance Honeycutt. So Orioles just making sure that every level of the minor leagues is going to have elite defense. That's fun. Allsup's interesting. He's a big guy, 235 pounds. I like that. The big thing for me, I don't care about the college ERA. Like Zach Fruit had a disastrous college ERA, but they all do with the juiced baseballs. But the walks, he went from 6 walks per 9 down to 2 walks per 9 this year. And then strikeouts went from 9 to just under 11 strikeouts per 9. So that was good. I saw an interview. I think he ditched all offseason leading into the 2024 season. He pitched exclusively from the stretch, and that apparently helped. It looks like the public reports have different write-ups on the fastball, which is what I noted was interesting. Like Baseball America was just like, it got hit hard, doesn't have much shape. It's whatever. But the slider was a swing and miss pitch. Joe Doyle's report says Allsup's fastball might be one of the best fastballs in the 2024 class. And then Prospects Live write-up says the fastball has great ride up in the zone. It's got a starter's body. He just needs to throw more strikes to stick on that starter's path. So, yeah, I think it's another one of those classic, like, with a lot of the pitchers I feel like the Orioles are going to draft. You look at the stats and it's like, what? Why? But you look under the hood and there's a lot of good things working under the hood there. I like Allsup. I think it's going to be interesting to see. I want to see if I don't know how many innings he pitched this year. I could see him being a guy, though, who we maybe don't see him this year, and he's like opening day starter for Aberdeen next year.
Yeah, that would be my expectation, too, based on the way the Orioles have handled a lot of their college pitchers, especially in last year's draft. But also, there's definitely an intriguing skill set here, and I think you hit the nail on the head, Nick. More often than not, the Orioles, especially in this part of the draft, are going to target pitchers who have good stuff, but the college numbers, when you look at them at first glance, you're going to question why they take that guy there. I think there's real upside with Alsop, and we might have to wait a while to see that, because if he doesn't pitch this summer, like you said, it's probably not going to be until Aberdeen next year. So could have a little ways to go, but definitely some intriguing things here. And then going back to Auvergne, we talk about this a lot with switch hitting infielders, and I think it holds true now with outfielders who have 80 grade speed and or defense. Just draft enough of them, eventually one of them's going to click. And it kind of feels like that's what the Orioles are doing here with Auvergne.
Yeah, I like, and he, to Auvergne's credit, like he said he had a down year. He admitted it. Excuse me, at USC. Well, the Cape Cod League, he's hitting 314 with 3 home runs, 11 total extra base hits in like 20 something games. I think he's OPSing 947. So he entered draft day riding a pretty high note. So that's good to see. I think he made himself some money this summer in the Cape Cod League, and the Orioles went ahead and said, yeah, we're going to take you in round 3. He's going to be fun. I would probably say, I don't know if this is a spoiler question, if we were going to end with this or not. Maybe I should save it. I'll just say it now. I think of all these guys, honestly, Auvergne might be my favorite. I was thinking about that, and I was like, no, don't go Auvergne, because like they draft one of these guys every year, and the bats, like, some we haven't seen the bat. We've never seen the bat go forward. Some we're still waiting for that bat to take a step forward. Like Tavian Josenberg is flashing, but it's like, is he ever gonna like fully put it together?
Trimble's putting it together right now, baby.
It took him 4 years, but that's injury related. I'm like, don't fall into that trap. But then I'm like, they keep drafting these guys for a reason. One of them is going to hit eventually. I like Auvergne. I think he's my favorite of the day 2 picks.
Yeah, and we'll break that down. So the 2 things now, just so you can put your thoughts around it, that I'm going to ask at the end are, who's your favorite prospect and who do you think has the most helium coming out in the class? So we'll circle back to that at the end of the episode. And real quick, before we move on, I'll just add on Alsop, because Nick brought up the innings pitch question. 62 and a third innings at Auburn this past season. His prior totals the year before that were 49 and a third last season, and 29 and a third the year before that. He's had more games pitched in the past, but this year also saw him make 11 starts after making just 8 the season before. So something to keep in mind. Alsop's workload certainly going up in his draft year. In the 5th round, the Orioles took Ryan Stafford, a catcher out of Cal Poly, who gets a lot of praise for his defense. And while it's easy at first glance to make Stafford fit into the profile of glove-first catcher, there is some promise there with the bat. A lot of scouting reports note that he has the ability to drive the ball to all fields, can make consistent contact. Now, at 5'10", 180 pounds, and at 21 years old, might not have a lot of power projection left necessarily, but still a guy with a good glove behind the plate and some interesting attributes on offense. And then in the 6th round, the Orioles took their lone high school pick from the first 2 days, and that was DJ Layton, a switch hitting shortstop out of Charlotte Christian High School in North Carolina, listed at 6'1", 185 pounds. Layton shows good glove work up the middle, was a good all-field stroke. He's currently a Southern Miss commit, so the Orioles might have to pay a little bit over that slot value of $318,000, just about $318,000 to get Layton to sign with them. But as the only high school pick from the first 2 days, he certainly carries some intrigue. So, Nick, I'll go back to you here. What are your thoughts on the Orioles' 5th and 6th rounders, Ryan Stafford and DJ Layton?
I'm trying to find this tweet real quick. Also, apparently, USC fans call over Mr. Triple. I forgot that. So I think he had 20-something triples last year. So shout out to Baseball University of the Blue Ridge Twitter account, who was giving us some great videos when the Ironbirds were in Asheville last week, showing us some Enrique Bradford Jr. home run. We won't mention that it's super easy to hit home runs there. It was a good swing. But apparently he coached against DJ Layton in high school. And he said it was obvious that this was a quick twitch athlete, tremendous balance at the plate, worked counts deep, was a great base runner, could get the bunt down. Excellent pick by Baltimore to grab an extremely athletic middle infielder out of the high school ranks, and showed some cut up clips against the games where he coached against him. Layton's, yeah, like you said, because it is a high school pick, and you look at their history, like Baumler, I know he's on the IL again, and I don't know if we're going to see Baumler. Maybe his brother gets drafted by the Orioles on day 3, but he was still arguably one of the highest upside starting pitching prospects in this organization at one point. Creed Willems, obviously, Kobe Mayo, of course. Like when the Orioles go high school,
Dale
we
Hernandez.
pay attention. Yeah, Hernandez should be starting for Oakland if he didn't get hurt. Like Orioles go high school, you pay attention because we haven't seen that success at the major leagues yet, but these guys have become like true prospects. So obviously, I don't watch a lot of high school baseball down in North Carolina. All we got is that tweet, and he's actually hard to find information on. He wasn't on Baseball America or Prospects Live's board. Joe Doyle had him up there, actually said, like, Ethan Anderson, you guys mentioned earlier, maybe having more power from the left side. Joe Doyle said DJ has more loft from the left side. And he also pitched. He's up to 94 on the mound. He pitched in high school. So I like it. I'm intrigued. Find more information out on him. And Stafford, yeah, we're going to talk about a lot of catchers. West Coast catcher, at least it's fun. Like Anderson is a high upside guy. Stafford doesn't have that upside, but it's like no disrespect to Pavoloni and Silas Ardoye and Cole Ehrman, like those guys. But it's like we see those guys every single draft. You need a lot of catchers in the minors. That's part one. But it's like these guys are really good defenders, but the bats just leave a lot to be desired. Stafford, I feel like, is a little bit the opposite, where that bat, he played for Team USA, like every other draft pick that the Orioles brought in. He was very good. I like the bat, makes him super intriguing. He's an impressive blocker, according to some reports. I like the bat. I want to see this kid hit.
Yeah, that's a great point. We did take 3 catchers in the first 10 rounds, but it did not the typical catcher, I feel like, that we've talked about in the past, like you said, Ardoin, Retzbach, these guys that are more defensive-oriented first, and if you get anything with the bat, that's a bonus. Anderson, obviously, most of his values with the bat, and Stafford, I think I saw anywhere from 50 to 55 hit tool, which pretty good for a right-handed hitting catcher that also has good defensive marks. So, yeah, you love to see that, and then we'll talk about the third catcher a little bit later. He's interesting as well, but yeah, Stafford, I'm definitely intrigued. Higher on him than Cole Ehrman for sure. DJ Layton just immediately becomes one of my favorite picks just because the Orioles took a high schooler, and they don't miss. They don't miss when they take a high schooler, at least as far as, like Nick said, becoming a legit prospect with helium that will eventually end up on our top 30 list at some point. So, yeah, love that pick. Don't even know much about him, but switch hitting shortstop from high school, I have a feeling he's going to be a guy that us and our listeners are going to love come the future.
And he'll sign too. Somebody asked that on Twitter, I think after the pick, and it's like all but just a couple guys that get picked on day 2, they sign. So he's coming to Baltimore. So.
Yeah, the 9th and 10th round picks are college seniors. You save money there, and Griffo Farrell should save us a few bucks as well.
Continuing down the draft now, we'll start with the Orioles' 7th round pick, left-hander Carson Dorsey out of Florida State. Dorsey sort of fits a projectable lefty mold, listed at 6'2", 184 pounds. He spent the last 2 seasons at Gulf Coast Junior College before transferring to Florida State before the 2024 season. 81 strikeouts and 69 and a third innings pitched for the Seminoles with 35 walks against a 4.67 ERA. Now, the Orioles have shown in this part of the draft that they have an interest in guys who have gone the JUCO route, whether it's players who transfer to larger schools like Zach Fruit or Matthew Etzel, or players taken directly out of JUCO like Michael Ferret. And Dorsey would be the latest pitcher to fit that profile. We'll get a little bit more into him in just a moment. But in the 8th round, the Orioles took their 3rd catcher so far in the draft, and that is Colin Tuft out of Tulane. Now, what makes Tuft interesting is that he can also play the outfield, and reports indicate that he does run well for a catcher. If you want to look at a blemish, he has not hit particularly well in the Cape Cod League so far this summer, but he is coming off a solid a solid season at Tulane after transferring there from Virginia. So, Bob, what are your thoughts on these 2 players?
Well, I guess the boring one. Sorry, Colin. Colin Tuft. This is more along the lines of the typical catcher that the Orioles will take in any given draft. But I do, like you mentioned, I do think it's interesting that he's a little bit swifter of foot, can play the outfield, and obviously the bat will need some development, but they took him for a reason. To fill out Delmarva next year, even though there's a bunch of catchers in the FCL right now too that will probably, but I guess a lot of injuries. So you go through catchers, you need them. But yeah, Carson Dorsey, much more interesting pick at 7. Like Vivek says in the chat, really high lefty arm slot, which is not as typical as it is for righties like Kyle Bradish. So, another Florida State guy, Jackson Ballmeister last year, Dorsey this year. I'm trying to think. I feel like there hasn't been a college lefty pitcher that is notable other than Riley Cooper that I can think of. So interesting from that point. And Jared Beck, obviously 7-footer. But yeah, I'm intrigued by Dorsey as well. I could see him being a guy that once he gets in the rotation next year at Delmarva or Aberdeen, whichever one it is, I could see him making some noise.
Yeah, how many guys named Colin from Tulane are the Orioles going to draft? 'Cause the Tulane to Baltimore pipeline is strong with Hudson Haskin, Keegan Gillies, Tuft, Colin Tuft, and Colin Burns. So we'll see who the real Colin is. Colin Tuft has 1 L. Colin Burns has 2 L's. That's my analysis with Colin Tuft. He was at UVA too. He was at UVA before he transferred to Tulane. So there's another UVA connection. He had double-digit stolen bases, double-digit home runs. I know Jonathan Mayo on the broadcast, he was one of the guys that they really didn't have much information on initially, but they did come back and say he's a defense-first guy plus makeup. And according to the scout or source that texted him during the draft, apparently said there is still projection left with the bat. So got a little bit of speed, like you guys mentioned. These aren't the typical guys who are like, oh, they're versatile, quote unquote. Like you're going to play first base in Delmarva on your off day. Like I think we see all of these guys probably in the outfield. And to go back to the other catcher real quick, because I've pulled up this tweet, Ryan Stafford, the other catcher from Peter Flaherty at Baseball America, great follow. This is before the season started, but Stafford's 2023 season, 90% end zone contact rate. Flaherty gave him a 60 hit tool and said he's a top 100 overall type player and threw out 44% of would-be base stealers year before last. So Stafford, very good pick there. With Dorsey, yeah, he was drafted by the Rangers at one point, came from the JUCO ranks. This was his 1 year at Florida State. He almost kind of looks like DL Hall when you watch him pitch. I think he's up to 94. I like the reports on the fastball. It's invisible up in the zone is how it was described. Low 80s sweeper with a good bite, fading changeup, good metrics per Prospects Live. If Joe Doyle at Future Star Series says the metrics sing on Carson Dorsey's pitches, that's fun to read. The velo's up. He was hitting like 92 before he came to Florida State. That's up even higher. And actually, I think Dan, Orioles Review, he really liked this pick. I saw him quote it on Twitter and saying that actually he had Carson Dorsey throwing in like the upper 80s when he was in the JUCO ranks. So he's up like 4 ticks in the past year or so. Maybe you get a little bit more fastball or a little bit more velo out of the fastball, but I just like he stepped up when it mattered the most. I was looking at his game logs. He had some blowups, but he also had an 11 strikeout performance against Wake Forest, who had a lot of guys go in the first round. And then in 3 NCAA tournament games, a 2.14 ERA, 20 strikeouts, just 6 walks. So he stepped up for Florida State when they needed some pitching help. Got the job done.
Yeah, I really like both of these picks. I think that there's real upside with Dorsey, and then with Tuft, it's kind of a unique profile. And a lot of catchers that you're going to see at this point in the draft are going to come into the organization as depth because honestly, you can never have enough catchers. But I do feel like they have something here where maybe he shows a little bit of versatility and you can mix and match if you want to put him in that outfield from time to time as he moves up. The speed certainly gives him a different element to his game. So interested to see what he will do. And we'll wrap up now with the 9th and 10th round picks. In the 9th round, the Orioles took Jack Crowder, a right-hander out of Illinois. Big right-hander, listed at 6'4", 225. Crowder is a fourth-year senior, so in all likelihood, the Orioles are going to get a deal from that $189,000 slot value for that pick. But Crowder might be a little bit more than what meets the eye for reasons I'm going to get into in a moment. And then the Orioles concluded day 2 of the draft by drafting Christian Rodriguez, a 6'6", 223-pound right-hander out of Cal State Fullerton. Now, if you follow baseball in the Baltimore area, you may have heard Rodriguez's name already. That's currently because he's pitching with the Orioles' former affiliate and current MLB Draft League squad, Frederick Keys, and recently set a single-game MLB Draft League record by fanning 16 batters in one contest against Mahoning Valley. That was also the first time in the league's history. Now, mind you, it's only been around a few years, but the first time in the league's history that a pitcher has thrown a 9-inning complete game in the first half of the season. And one thing to keep in mind with the draft league is that data is really available there. So if you hear a lot of things about data in relation to Rodriguez, it doesn't mean that the data is necessarily better than him than it is on other guys. It's just more readily available. But when you dig into what is there for Rodriguez, pretty interesting mix with his arsenal. So Bob, I'll go to you for your thoughts on these final 2 picks of day 2.
Yeah, Crowder, big kid, 6'4", 225, out of Illinois. I'd say, profiles as a reliever, but we know he'll probably be the opening night starter for Delmarva next year, and he'll pitch 4 innings an outing just like every college pitcher does, at least their first year or 2 in the organization. So, yeah, I think he seems like what the Orioles like, a big right-handed pitcher. And then Christian Rodriguez, 6'6", a little bit skinnier on the mound watching the video, and seems more of like a pitcher who's going to mix his pitches together, whereas I think Crowder is a guy that's going to attack you with a fastball slider. Rodriguez seems like he's going to mix things up, be a little more approach strategy driven. And I think when the Orioles take a pitcher, I say I like it because I like what they're doing. They got some of the best pitching development in all of baseball going on in the minors. Hasn't obviously trickled up to the major league level just yet. We're starting to see it with Povich and McDermott soon, but they're coming. They're coming pretty quickly here.
Crowder, he's a senior sign pick, right? Like he was going to get a couple $1,000s. A lot of his money is going to go to Auvergne. I kind of get like trying to look at last year's class. I feel like this is like a Jacob Cravey type pick where like he's a big guy. He's going to eat innings. He pitched 90 innings at Illinois this year, but I wouldn't be shocked if he's pitching for Delmarva in a couple of weeks, just because he is a big guy. He can handle the workload, and why not see what you got there with him? I don't hate it. I know Burt Granger, shout out to Burt Granger, D1Baseball.com. He saw him a couple of times last year. So if you go on his Twitter account, you'll see a couple of his cut-ups that he did there of Crowder. And it's like fastball up to 95, 81 to 83 mile per hour slider, 84, 85 mile per hour changeup. He, just like Dorsey, he saved his best outing for last. He pitched 8 innings, allowing 1 run, no walks, 5 strikeouts in the NCAA regionals. I think that was against Indiana State for Illinois. So ended his college career on a high note. And as a freshman, he was considered one of the top draft picks in the Big Ten. So put him in Delmarva. Let's see what you got. Christian Rodriguez does look fun. 6'6" guy, like you guys mentioned. Dominating in the draft league, so in the Orioles' backyard. It's low 90s fastball, high spin slider, curveball, changeup. But it looks like he's from Cal State Fullerton, but it looks like he entered the transfer portal and he committed to Hawaii. So the choice is now Hawaii or Delmarva. Where do you want to go next year? Tough choice if that's me, but I imagine he gets a maybe around slot value. So that's what, 100-something grand he's going to get. 10th round, though. That's been the lucky round for the Orioles. Billy Cook, Matthew Etzel. Maybe Christian Rodriguez follows that mold there.
Yeah, the slot there about $179,000 this year in the 10th round. I was researching Crowder before the show, and I found an article over at IlliniGuys.com. written by Matt Stevens, and I thought that this was really interesting. The article was just published
Your brother
today.
writes for them, Nick? Okay.
That's my cousin Matt.
Crowder had, as Nick mentioned, been one of the top prospects in the Big Ten going back to the beginning of his college career, and he's had a lot of ups and downs at Illinois. And one of the big adjustments he made before this season was to improve his physical conditioning. This article says that he lost 25 pounds this past summer, and what that helped him do was work deeper into games and maintain his velocity further into games, and that's reflected in his innings pitched total, which took a massive spike from a year ago, 42 and a third innings pitched in 2023, up to 90 and a third this past summer. I don't love the relatively low strikeout numbers for a guy that size who has a fastball that's apparently 92, 95 is what this article says, and what the source that Nick mentioned had him at. But this article also notes that he's got a 3-pitch mix that includes the fastball to go along with the slider and a cutter. So that feels like the kind of repertoire the Orioles can work with and develop. I think the Jacob Cravey comp, there's something to that, which is somewhere in the low levels in the minor leagues next year. He's going to be their innings eater. He's going to be the guy that this year probably saves them some money in the first 10 rounds. But there might be a little bit more ceiling here than what the profile suggests.
Yeah, we'll have to see with Crowder. It's the only thing with all these pitchers, they do have the intriguing traits. Dorsey, obviously, I think Dorsey is this guy who hasn't even began to tap into his potential, coming from the JUCO ranks, just 1 year at Florida State, and then half year in the bullpen, half year in the rotation. So I think there's certainly a lot of upside there with Dorsey. I don't see a ton of upside here with Crowder, but I don't know. I'm looking for this year's Jackson Baumeister, and I don't know if I see that in this class, to be honest. But it's out these arms, just like last year. It was we really didn't know where to rank these guys, the arms last year, because we didn't see them. We saw good reports, and it was a lot of the stats don't look good, but a lot of the data looks good, and a lot of the data we learned in the offseason looked good. So it was really hard to figure out where to rank these guys. And then we saw most of them, probably except Jacob Cravey, really took off at the beginning of this year. And that became a lot of fun to watch and much easier to slot these guys. I feel like a lot of these pitchers are in that same boat where, I don't know, for me, it's even more tough, I feel like, to figure out how many of these guys are we going to put in our top 50, especially the pitchers. But
yeah, the pitchers are tough. Preliminary, putting them in my top 50, I have 4 in the top 50 and one literally just outside at 51. So if Cade Povich graduates, I could say we have 5, but that's my initial thoughts. And obviously the more we learn, the easier it is to be able to fit them in.
I'll note real quick that this is going to be the last breakdown that all 3 of us are going to do on the draft, but Nick is planning on a special episode tomorrow to break down the 3rd and final day of the MLB draft. So make sure you listen to that to get more insight. And of course, as these players enter the system, we'll get more information on them. You think back a year ago this time, we really knew nothing about Matthew Etzel other than the draft day reports that were out about him. But Etzel goes to Delmarva, hits the cover off the ball. He's on our radar a little bit more. Now, next thing you know, it seems like we're talking about him every week as he's in Double-A Bowie's outfield. And with that, let's go ahead and wrap up here with the best pick so far. I'll give you both days. Your favorite pick so far, and the guy you think has the most helium. And I'll start with Nick.
if we're doing both days, I'm gonna go with Vance Honeycutt. I'll take the low hanging fruit there and go the first round pick. I really do. Like I said, I feel a little bit better about the Griffo Farrell pick. Still not very exciting. If I remove who else was available when the Orioles took him, it makes it a little bit easier to digest there. But it is what it is. He's going to be an Oriole, and I'm going to cheer for him every single night and watch him. But the Honeycutt pick, as I was thinking about it more, I like it even more just because there are very real holes in that profile and his game, and you're asking the Orioles to fix a major issue, but what if? And this is the fun part about this draft. It's these college guys, these high school guys, it's a chance to say, look what they did in college, look at the tools, look at the data, and now say, what if? What if this is the organization that they get in and it clicks for them and they are able to fix that? Then Honeycutt is going to be a phenomenal pick. And I don't think it was just like typical front office lip service when Matt Blood was like, seemed pretty excited last night about Honeycutt falling to the Orioles. I wouldn't be shocked if Honeycutt was higher on the Orioles board than most other teams across the league. And the guy with the most helium, I think I'll change my answer and flip it to a Vern, is the guy with the most helium because he's, down here at USC, like we mentioned, but he went to the Cape Cod League and he is excelling. He's having a great year. And now he's at an organization that really wants him. So I'm excited to see him steal a couple bags, hit those triples, Mr. Triple apparently, and make some noise in Delmarva in like 2-3 weeks.
Yeah, Honeycutt, I have no issues with. Like you said, you get that high upside. And again, just like the Fabians, the Bradfields of the world, even if the hit tool doesn't improve and he's a 35, 40 hit tool guy, that can still be a major leaguer, even if he's not a starter or a star on the a future Oriole team. That's a major leaguer as a fourth, fifth outfielder that has real tools that can help a team down the line. So love the high floor with a bonus ceiling. Oh, who knew the ceiling was here? Favorite pick of the draft, Ethan Anderson for me. Switch hitting, power, hit tool, doesn't swing and miss, walks a lot, like just nothing not to like with the bat. The question comes, can he stick a catcher? And even if he can't, can he hit enough to be a legit left fielder or first baseman? And the guy with the most helium, I'll say, is DJ Professor Layton, the high school pick. I just have a feeling that we're going to love this kid very soon.
I'll go with Honeycutt as my favorite pick in the draft. I think that the Orioles can at least get the hit tool to a point where you can live with let's say a 250 batting average a lot of years because he's hitting for power, he's stealing bases, he's playing center field at a high level. This is, I think, as good as an athlete as you can get in a draft class that is pretty thin compared to past years. And we know that when you're down at 22, you're going to be taking a chance somewhere. You're either going to get a guy that has a high floor but not a very high ceiling, or you're going to have to roll the dice and see if you can get a guy with a high ceiling but questionable tools to work out. That's what they were doing with Honeycutt. And while there are clear deficiencies in his game, and I don't expect him to hit the ground running in pro ball, there's enough there for me to believe that the Orioles can get a lot out of him. And then as for the helium guy, I'm going to go with Carson Dorsey. To make the jump from JUCO to the ACC and do what he did at Florida State this past year is impressive. He's 21. He'll be 22 in his first full season of pro ball, which will probably start at Aberdeen. As I mentioned, projectable. He's got a good fastball. He may be a little raw given the JUCO background, but the Orioles have shown that they can get a lot out of players who have JUCO experience. And if I'm looking at him and seeing him on a Zach Fruit type of trajectory with his stuff, I'd be very happy with that.
I think it's a lot what we said last year too. It's like outside of Honeycutt, it's maybe not super sexy class, but this is what I kind of really love about the Orioles draft class is they clearly do their homework. Maybe a lot of lunch pail guys, but it's lunch pail guys with a flashy car. There's the flashy tools there, and the Orioles are taking big bets on those tools. And again, I'm not going to say it's blind optimism when looking at the draft, but it's pretty hard to deny the success that the Orioles have had with these bats in particular. So now it's just, let's get day 3 over with. And honestly, let's get these guys to Delmarva already, because I'm already excited to watch them on the field in an Orioles affiliate uniform.
So what do you think we see tomorrow based on this question from Dental Office? And we'll wrap here. They taking all pitchers, or you expect some position players mixed in?
I think mostly pitchers, probably 8 of the 10 picks would be my guess, but they'll take one high school or JUCO position player that might be a tough sign, and then maybe a guy that's like almost guaranteed not to sign, but just in case we can't sign one of our top picks for whatever reason, we have a backup, cough, Carter Young. So, yeah, that's what I would expect.
I want to know the money situation And it's like there are a lot of high school kids that are like top 100 high school kids that are sitting there available. I almost wonder if like you say, hey, let's take a shot on one of these high school kids. It's a very slim chance that they're actually going to sign, but why not? Let's take a risk here. I wouldn't hate that, especially if they got the money to play around, which looks like it does. I feel like you're going to see at least one, if not two infielders, college infielders, because they only took the one. The rest are all catchers. So I feel like you're going to see that. And yeah, I would say majority pitchers, though. That's what they did last year. I could see them going that route again. Anthony Silva, TCU, let's get Joey Ortiz 2.0. I'm going to say it again. I know he had a down year, and not typically what the Orioles like to go for, guys who are coming off bad years. But I want to bet on Anthony Silva. Let's bring him in the organization.
And with that, that does it for tonight. So as I mentioned, Nick is going to have a special third-day recap of the MLB draft tomorrow. You're not going to want to miss that. And then we will be back on the air next week at our regular time to break down all things Orioles, including major leagues, minor leagues, and maybe some fallout from the draft. Maybe a few players will have signed by the time we hit the air next week. And in the meantime, you can track that news on our social media channels, of which there are plenty, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, and YouTube. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to our Patreon community and sign up to become a member. You can sign up as a paying member for as little as $3 a month, and at the $5 and $10 levels, have access to bonus daily coverage from Bob, Nick, and myself. For Bob Field and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, presented by BetOnline and part of the Believe Podcast Network.
You know when you're listening to a true crime story that has an unbelievable plot twist that makes you stop in your tracks? That's what our podcast, People Are the Worst, brings you with each episode. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Rebecca. We're identical twins who love true crime cases that make you say, didn't see that coming, and we hate the people responsible for them. Listen to People Are the Worst now on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, it's Michelle Beadle. That's right, the Michelle Beadle. You're welcome. You love talking about sports. I love talking about sports. You know the only thing cooler than talking about sports? Sports! And right now, all your favorite sports are on Sirius XM. I'm talking every NFL game, every game from the NBA, NHL, MLB, every NASCAR race, golf major conference college sports, and all the top games in the WNBA. If you get your heart pumping, it's on Sirius XM. To start your free trial of Sirius XM today, visit SiriusXM.com/believe.